I say it every week I review this show. These stupid arrival shots at the start every time. We already know who's advertised for the show. We don't need to see people just walking around backstage, unsure of whether or not to acknowledge the camera following them. Ultimately walking awkwardly, as they just don't know how in character they should be. These shows have enough time-wasting nonsense in them, between the tsunami of commercials and the endless drone shots that accomplish nothing. Get to the action from the get-go, goodness me. Corey Graves is back. Graves is a hit-and-miss commentator, but I'll take his quips and actual wrestling knowledge over Shat McAfee any day of the week. Graves' demotion to NXT earlier this year was truly bizarre. Show kicks off with Iyo Sky, arguably the most popular women's wrestler in the promotion, the world, maybe, this year, who, despite having one of the greatest women's matches in WWE history back at WrestleMania, has not been booked to defend her title since. And no, for now there appears to be no rumours of any injuries or any other such issues holding her back. Here, it appeared they were leaning into Liv Morgan becoming her next challenger, her first challenger in months. Liv Morgan and her main man, Dominico Mysterio, came out, and has anyone else noticed how all that heat Mysterio used to get is dying down? He actually gets some cheers in the ring now, and on the mic, the hatred's just not there like it used to be from the live crowds. They'll have to think of yet another absurd big angle to try and cover for his generally mediocre output soon. Liv Morgan took on the role of the average fan from last week when she lampooned poor Iyo Sky's utterly ridiculous comment on Nikki Bella somehow paving the way for modern women's wrestling. This was all just a bunch of hot air to get to Liv Morgan challenging Iyo Sky for the gold. Crowd loved Sky, even with WWE's strange refusal to do much with her of late, something we will discuss later. And she kept things very basic on the mic here, telling Morgan to shut her face. Sky's charm dwindled a bit when she told Morgan she has to earn a title shot, apparently being a multi-time women's champ, including a long run that ended earlier this year without her getting a rematch, and multiple tag title runs isn't enough for Iyo Sky to finally get in the ring with someone again. A little bit of ruckus over the belt ended this inoffensive segment. Iyo Sky and Liv Morgan are two of the better women's wrestlers in the promotion. Sky is an excellent high-flying babyface between the ropes, and Morgan is one of the more charismatic promos in the division. Not a bad feud to set up, but this angle suggested it'll take a while. And booking the men's Intercontinental Champion to get booted by a woman half his size was certainly a choice. Women's Queen of the Ring, Stephanie Vaquer, the hot new act everyone's talking about. Asuka, the star returning after a long hiatus. Ivy Nile, a vapid jobber who stands around in American-made segments. Raquel Rodriguez, a wrestler who put all of her skill points into growing tall, and absolutely none of them into that funny little thing we call having a personality. So there's two sensible choices here, and there's two pin eaters. Audience seemed very happy to see Asuka, who quickly got into it with Vaquer before a decent spot for Rodriguez, where she powerbombed Asuka right into the other competitors. About a minute in here, just over, and an ad break has already arrived. Great. The crowd died down a lot here, not much interest, until Vaquer caused a bulge in Booker T's pants again with the devil's kiss on Jubvi Nile, and then later on Raquel Tall against the ring apron. Ivy Nile throws some decent suplexes, to be fair to her, hitting a German on Asuka, which led to another ad break. This isn't even 10 minutes in, my goodness. Rodriguez was allowed to look strong throughout the match, including picking both Vaquer and Nile up on her shoulders before Asuka turned it into a crashing disaster with a big dropkick. Rodriguez later landed the Tejana Bomb, whatever the hell you call it, on Vaquer, but telegraphed her pinfall would end badly when she positioned herself perfectly to get pulled out of the ring during her pin attempt. Rhea Bloody Ripley, oh how cringe, she's here, handing Rodriguez a beating, setting up Asuka, pinning her for the win. The audience was pretty dead for a lot of this until Ripley showed up for the closing stretch. So, King of the Ring, often used to help set up and establish newer stars. Most famously, perhaps, was the 2002 edition, where a rookie Brock Lesnar plowed through the competition to get his first shot at the WWE Championship, quickly establishing him as one of the promotion's top talents mere months into his main roster run. There are plenty of exciting newer stars, male and female, who could have benefited from progressing in the tournament. Bron Breakker, Stephanie Vaquer, Carmelo Hayes, Penta, just to name a few. all out in service of middle-aged, well-established talents such as Sami Zayn, Randy Orton, and now Asuka. Utterly bizarre, risk-free, repetitive booking. After the bout, Asuka promised the legend herself, the great Kathy Kelly, that she will win the tournament, which, obviously. Did that even need to be said? Of course she's planning to win the tournament. Of course that's what Asuka and anyone else in it would be aiming for. Just once. I want a wrestler to say, with not even a hint of irony, they have no intention of winning something. I just want to see what would happen if they said that. I'm not interested in this tournament. I didn't want to be in it. I might forfeit. We kind of got that quite a few years ago now with William Regal heading into his final ever match. It was against Cesaro. And in his pre-match promo, he just straight up admitted he was horribly outmatched and was almost definitely going to lose the match. And I'll tell you what, it was actually a very dramatic promo. It was very interesting. A lot of tension teased between the Judgment Day next. Ooh, no one cares. The original Judgment Day with Edge was a bit hokey, but it was getting interesting when Vince McMahon pulled the plug on it to make Edge a babyface again. From there, it turned into an actually very good heel faction for a long time, but the utter failure to make up for the lost star power of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley from last year, who really carried the faction, those two, has rendered this an undercard oddball act that is very difficult to take seriously. It's basically the Munchkins faction now. Throughout this segment, crowds chanted what, which was perfectly fair enough for two different reasons. One, the sound, for whatever reason, was really bad here. Maybe there was some technical issue or something, but everything was oddly quiet. And two, no one cares. They've been teasing tension without doing anything with it for an age, just like they did with Priest and Balor back in 2023 and 2024. One of these days, Triple Nose will have to learn the importance of actually pulling the trigger on time. The savior of Monday Night Raw, out next, World Heavyweight Champion Gunther. Sure, he's not that charismatic or three-dimensional as a character, and sure, the flabby man boobs and sagging gut of Volta are returning, and sure, there are more exciting champion options out there. But last week, he put a stop to the brain rot of Midcard Jey Uso and his incomprehensible rambles. A man whose once decent promos a few years ago in the Bloodline have been reduced to the retardation of shrill, barely comprehensible yelling in a tone of voice that makes him sound like he is about to cry, followed by one truly awful line. 4 letters, 1 word. Gunther actually had some heel heat here, and he talked tough about the looming threat of Seth Rollins and his money in the bottom briefcase. Instead of good old Zesty Zest, it was the ghost of Bill Goldberg who entered, wearing a Goldberg's Last Ride top. Oldberg, more like. Hobbled on down to the ring. Barely mobile. For all you youngsters out there, by the way, this Oldberg fella, he used to be an explosive beast with scary strength. He'd press all kinds of wrestlers over his head. Big heavyweights, Scott Steiner, Brock Lesnar, you name it. Goldberg took them down, or lifted them up, rather. Now, though, he just kind of looks like a surprisingly in-shape retiree. Time is undefeated. Anyways, Oldberg cut an okay babyface promo, calling back to his and Gunther's strange segment all the way back at Bad Blood last year, which now, all of these months later, is actually going somewhere. How exciting. Talk about striking when the iron is ice cold. To sum up for you, basically the promo was, "Hey Gunther, 8 or so months ago, you were a bit rude to me. I can't say I appreciated that. And while everyone else has now completely forgotten about it, I'd now like a match because of it. In a month's time, actually. Not right now, thanks. An entire pregnancy and birth could have happened in the time between you being a bit rude to me and me finally getting in the ring with you because of it. How do you like them apples?" Anyways, bad news for Saudi and Cestia. It looks like they won't be getting a World Heavyweight title match at Night of Champions, as Gunther and Geriatric Berg will be wrestling at Saturday night's main event. Apparently this is the devastating big draw match Triple Nose is planning to use against AEW All In that night. And as someone who grew up being a massive Goldberg mark, I'm quite confident in saying I'll give All In a whirl over this if I'm not doing anything that weekend. Anyways, a grumpy Austrian putting a rich old Jew out to pasture. Where have I seen this before? the great AJ Styles, whose closing stretch with the WWE involves pointlessly meandering around the midcard, flip-flopping between heel and face, and doing little of note, wrestled the MODOK of wrestling. The monster cranium himself, Jub D. Jub Dunner. Man, this guy's head is something else. I know it's low-hanging fruit to point out, but come on, it's ridiculous. It looks like that wheelchair-bound Shuts caller in that Hills Have Eyes remake. Marvel, frankly, should have taken notes from this guy's appearance when they were designing The Leader for Not Steve Rogers' Gay New World earlier this year. Yeah, this was just a quick match, largely to set up Styles versus Mysterio at a later date, where the Phenomenal One largely had McDonough's Chernobyl head on the ropes, unless Mysterio helped him out. Jub Dunner did impress with an athletic leap over the barricade to squash Styles on the outside at one point, highlight of the bout, I'd say. Styles survived a devastating nuclear mutant headbutt and then a brainbuster back in the ring before rallying with a quick comeback to plant Jub D with the Styles Clash for the win. Sheamus, a once pretty good heel and still very good brawler at his age, is now associating with the utter embarrassment that is American Alpha without Chad Gable. Apparently, the former multi-time world champion, as well as Royal Rumble, King of the Ring, and Money in the Bank winner, needs encouragement from Jubbers to take on World Cuckoldry Champion Cucksev. We haven't seen old Miro in a bit now. From what I understand, he's currently in that cage in the corner of his bedroom as Lana finds a new gentleman friend to perform for them with. When they inevitably do another cuck angle with the man who shares his woman, who do you think the bull will be this time? I'd like to see Omos make a return personally. What do you guys think? They briefly teased more tension between Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. Waller should be a Miz-type mid to upper mid-card heel. He's funny, he's colourful, and could be a good foil for many babyface acts. Theory, meanwhile, really should have been a world champion by now, or at least in the discussion for it. Unfortunately for these two, being in shape, in their primes, and well liked by Vince McMahon before he left means they're not allowed to have nice things under Triple Nose's watch. Oh no, extreme torture next as Bayley and her utterly enormous rear end, my goodness me, are in the house for a segment with Becky Cringe. Bayley actually cut a passable babyface promo about the injustice of what happened to her at WrestleMania. The crowd were behind her here, and while her delivery was a bit stiff and child actor-esque like it always is, she is a sympathetic, wronged figure in storyline. Bayley let the promo feel a little more real for a second when she acknowledged Becky Lynch has been ahead of her on the totem pole for many years now. The material here really wasn't that bad at all, it all made sense, but the promo did drag quite a bit. It all went horribly downhill when Cringe came out. Cringe did some basic heel work, dissing Bayley, and suggesting the fans just weren't that into her, which is true. As always though, the heavy overacting and cartoon facial expressions from Cringe make everything as phony and as corny as possible. One somewhat amusing point here though, when Cringe mentioned her taking down Bird Lady, she also noted the cheers she got for it. Bell to bell, Bird Lady is actually a much better technical wrestler than either of these two. But the desperate push to get her over as a big face just isn't landing. It probably doesn't help that last week, her interpretation of acting angry was to be a constipated hunchback moving in slow motion rather than sprinting down to the ring to hand Lynch a beating like an actual cool babyface might have. Anyways, Bayley trashed Lynch for having her head up her own ass 24/7, which would explain these self-indulgent heel turns that rarely lead to anything fruitful, particularly when Lynch was really only anywhere near superstar level when she was a babyface. Lynch clapped back with a joke about Bayley's jubbing ways, good line, but again the delivery so cheesy. Bayley then fending off a slow-motion, heavily telegraphed cheap shot attempt from Oim de Man ended this segment. This was very long. But as far as Becky Cringe promos go since she came back, this segment was not offensively bad, and in fact cut a much more clear-cut story with more logical psychology than Lynch's feud with Bird Lady so far. So you might look at the title of this video and wonder what the hell is this guy's problem. The segment was inoffensive, standard stuff, sure. The problem is that Iyo Sky, the women's world champion on this show, who many would argue stole the show at WrestleMania, and has been receiving superstar reactions from audiences for much of this year, is in the back seat. Despite the acclaim surrounding her work and the general fan interest, Sky and her title have largely been relegated to backstage segments and the occasional brief in-ring segment that also largely goes nowhere. Becky Cringe, meanwhile, with a secondary belt lacking in any history or real prestige, has been put front and centre for the women's division like it's 2019. The work rate queen fans really like, who could front the division for a few months easily, is relegated to being a nothing burger performer, so a has-been can run around playing cartoon villain with a B-tier prop title. Now obviously an adequate booker would easily be able to find space for both women's champions on a show, but we're not watching something run by adequate bookers at the moment, unfortunately. Instead, apparently for this new intercontinental belt to matter, the world belt must be neutered. By the time things go back to normal in this regard, Sky's organic crowd support will have dwindled thanks to inactivity, and the women's world title will have nothing to differentiate it from the women's mid-card belt, bar a considerably nicer design. So overall, this is appalling booking and management, failing to strike while the iron's hot with the hip current top star, whilst propping up a past-it relic whose crowd interest has consistently dropped every year this decade thus far. To sum up, Sky finally defending her gold again, whenever the hell that happens, is going to be marred by inactivity. The whole title run is going to be tainted by inactivity, staining some of the babyface hero credibility she managed to build up earlier this year. Utterly dismal planning all round. So next up, Liv Morgan, who was just set up earlier in the show to be Sky's long-awaited next challenger, suffered a dislocated shoulder opposite Jubby Zayn. Presumably the plan here was for Morgan to beat Zayn to get a little more heat for her growing feud with Zayn's pal Sky. Instead, blink and you'll miss it, this match ended in disaster almost immediately. Zayn seemingly went for a takedown, and Morgan got hurt on impact, immediately clutching at her damaged shoulder before the show cut to commercial. Zayn won, technically, after the break when it was clear Morgan was in a bad way. Talk about dreadful timing. Not that there's such a thing as good timing for an injury, of course, that would be weird, but you know what I mean. Morgan is consistently one of the most over women's acts in the promotion at the moment. Had budding singles feuds with Iyo Sky and Nikki Bella at the ready, and has that strange Judgment Day angle with Dirty Dom and Roxanne Perez as well. Total disaster. Hopefully she makes a speedy recovery. Yet another Karrion Cross Sami Zayn segment next. Will they? Won't they? I'm tired of all this cock teasing, damn it! Either let these two wrestle, let them wrestle, damn it. Either let them wrestle, or let's just move on. I mean, I can't be the only one who gets homoerotic vibes from Cross's strange, close-talking obsession with old Sami, right? It can't just be me. If it was just me, that would actually reflect more on me than the angle, which would be impossible, because as you might recall,
I am not gay.
Anyways, Cross predicted a Randy Orton victory over Zayn in the King of the Ring. Let's hope he's proven right. Zayn called Cross a coward. I mean, look, it's not Cross's fault the top brass refused to book him in matches beyond midgets in main event. Give the guy a break. Zayn then revealed that once he gets eliminated from King of the Ring, him and Cross will wrestle, and the crowd went mild. I wonder if Cross will deliberately lose like he did in that weird match with AJ Styles before WrestleMania. Someone might want to tell him the whole point of competition is to try and win, to compete, as it were. Main event time, let's rack them up. Sheamus, very seasoned, well-accomplished veteran. Rarely a big hit in the main event role, to be honest, but a dependable mid to upper mid-card guy who can brawl, sell, talk, and play to the crowd just fine. Cuck serve, Cuck with a nonsensical religious zealot gimmick. Just came back. If the WWE want that to feel like a big deal, he needs to win a few things. Bronson Reed, not the best look, to put it very politely, but a very good, hard-hitting wrestler with some great moves and a mastery of mean facial expressions and body language. And Jey Uso, just coming off the premature end of a world title reign that saw the World Heavyweight Championship become the Intercontinental Championship 2.0. Let's see what happens. About a minute and a half into this main event that has important stakes in the big tournament the promotion's running at the moment, we got an ad break, just off the back of Jey Uso landing a dive on Jobsev. So a big part of the story here is that Jey Uso's ribs are still damaged. This was a key part of the story in last week's title match as well, with Gunther heelishly exploiting Uso's injury to dominate the match. Here he was once again taped up, and Reed in particular seemed aware of his bad health, but ultimately It was just used as a prop to try to spike fans' sympathy for the Yeet Man. Some fun brawling between Sheamus and Reed on the outside, and later between the ropes helped liven this matchup. Rusev was barely a factor for a lot of this, getting taken out by Jey Uso more than once. Sheamus got a big pop for planting Reed with the white noise. Reed has to be the shortest big man, who's still convincing as a big man threat, ever in the business at this rate. Rusev finally heated up, dealing out attacks to all three men and overcoming Jey Uso, handing out some of his flaccid, impotent super kicks to lock the Yeet Man up in his accolade hole. Good near fall later where Uso broke up Reed covering Sheamus after a big tsunami. Uso hit Big Bronson with the running hug to kneel he calls a spear, and finally, the other man patrolling Seth Rollins' back door arrived. Bron Breakker attacked Jey Uso before getting into it with Sami Zayn, who came out to help Uso. This all got very overbooked very quickly, with Penta swooping in to land a dive on Breakker, and finally LA Knight got some revenge for SmackDown and sabotaged Reed, who we're seriously meant to believe couldn't come back from a soft as Cool Whip spear and 2 cumbersome splashes from Uso. Last year, this guy was surviving curb stomps and huge brawls with Braun Strowman. Now, well, he's now just a measly expendable henchman. That's what's happened. Sad stuff. Interesting post-match segment where Rollins came prancing out to attack Uso, but changed his mind when Cody Rhodes arrived, arguably to the biggest pop of the night by a very wide margin. There was a quick face-off between Rhodes and Rollins, and we're all reminded of how the WWE have completely undone the goodwill and fan support Rollins got for turning face and helping Rhodes last year, which all feels like a complete lifetime ago now. So Rhodes versus Uso, babyface leading man versus babyface underdog. Assuming Rhodes wins, it means his babyface comeback story after WrestleMania now involves crushing the comeback dreams of a fan favourite along the way. It's not the end of the world, but it is flawed psychology, especially when Rhodes could have beaten either Rusev or Reed next week to look like a conquering hero opposite a big bully heel instead, something that would have got a lot more crowd support a lot more quickly. Regardless, there are some interesting storytelling possibilities with Rhodes and Uso given their history. Let's just hope Rhodes has his work boots on. So yeah, main event was easily the best match of the night in an otherwise very humdrum, oddly paced episode, not particularly exciting or eventful. Overall, the booking of the King of the Ring has completely failed to showcase any fresh stars en route to Rhodes, presumably, most likely at this rate, winning the whole thing to set up his John Cena rematch.